Major Elden Ring spoilers, by the way.
While playing Elden Ring, I always had a bit of an issue with how Marika's hair looked, specifically at the start of her boss cutscene because of how people in the community assumed that Marika only had one braid, despite the multiple statues of her having two. That cutscene only shows one messy, fallen apart braid, and when we start to fight Radagon, we can also only see one. I didn't like how it looked, because it feels like the braid isn't fully centered. Like, she had two and one was cut off and that remaining hair fell out of the braid or was re-braided to be one braid. I brought this up to some of my friends, but they didn't think it was important and that I was probably just looking too far into things. To give you all some context, here are some photos of my hair. So I think I know what I'm talking about when I said that it looks off. Anyways, when Shadow of the Erdtree released and we found Marika's braid as an item, I felt vindicated in my previous observation, so lo and behold, when I decided to do a second playthrough of the game and saw that opening cutscene with the full context of the lore, I hope you can see what I was annoyed about.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
Did you catch that? Marika's hair is a single braid of what was previously a double braid as we see her shorter hair, whereas Radagon has one centered braid that's thicker than Marika's, which means it's only one of one. Why is that? If they're the same person, then why are they being depicted with different hairstyles? I started to do some research. Radagon's hair is a double braid on his statue, with his hair behind him, but only one braid is visible, compared to Marika's two braids with one cut shorter than the other. I think this represents the differences of their beliefs, despite being in one body. Marika shattering the Elden Ring literally shatters her hair, whereas Radagon's desire for the Golden Order and repairing the ring shows us a full, singular braid. By the time we fight Radagon, he's just as destroyed as Marika, which is why I believe his hair has fallen apart too. Not just that he didn't have time to fix it, it's that he needs to stop the tarnished with whatever he has left. Something else I'd like to note is their hair color, especially of the Empyreans and the other major characters. Less so NPCs, given that we don't get to see too many of their heads, so I'm only going to focus on them when criteria applies. Sorry, Hotboy Vike. If you look like this, then please comment down below. Also, feel free to like and subscribe when you're there, maybe. Starting back with Marika again, if we look at the characters who also have blonde hair, being Godwyn, Miquella, Leda from promotional materials, Irina and Hyetta, Roderika, Quile, Raya, and Kenneth, we can see a pattern. All of these characters are either directly holy figures or of the noble class in some way, with Leda counting in that she's the leader of our little gang in the Land of Shadow. Yellow already being tied to holy makes sense to be tied to these characters' designs. Being blonde in our society is associated with desirability and a higher status, so it makes sense that the nobler characters are also blonde. While we usually associate things that are holy with things that are above us either individually as humans, or in an ascended mortal flesh kind of way, Elden Ring subverts this, and all of these characters go through some kind of fall where they lose their higher status. Marika shattering the Elden Ring, Godwyn getting ganked, Miquella's nascency and death at our hands, Leda's betrayals, Irina's death and possession as Hyetta, Roderika being the only survivor of her group at the hands of Godric, Quile seeking redemption, Raya losing her family and her necklace, and Kenneth losing Fort Height. Excluding Roderika and Irina, though made up for by Hyetta, all of these characters are also tied to holy or faith-based weapons or attacks. Given that Marika's braid, a collection of yellow hair cut off from its owner, gives the most protection from holy damage in the game, I believe that it's a metaphor for letting go of power. Marika leaving her hair as an offering to the grandmother statue when no one is left is an apology to her people. She worked with the Hornsent until she betrayed them to ascend. It's a representation of her recognizing how power can ruin us and that she can't stop herself. As said by the minor Erdtree incantation, Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. Radagon, however, has red hair, and if we look at all the characters who have red hair, Mesmer, Malenia, Millicent, Radon, Ronnie, kind of, Rykard, maybe, I think he'll go in his own section. This painting is kind of faded, so it's hard to tell. There's already lore out there of Radagon being related to the Fire Giants and Misbegotten because of the red hair. Specifically, in the Fire Giant's whip, it tells us Radagon hated his red hair. Red represents fire, passion, blood, power, you know what's up. Excluding Ranni for reasons I'll get to later, and Millicent because she's just an extension of Malenia, all of these characters have an army and are notable for their fighting skills. In arguments over who would reasonably become the next Elden Lord if the Tarnished wasn't there, these are the characters who you would see pop up in discussion. Maybe not Mesmer because he's in permanent timeout, but still. All of these characters are also tied to a specific magic or incantation type, with Radagon's Golden Order spells, Mesmer's Flame spells, Malenia's Scarlet Rot, Radagon's Gravity Magic, and kind of Ranni with the Spirit Calling Bell and Frost Magic. Even the Fire Giant has his own incantations. And if you count Gary's incantations, then Millicent has her own, though again, she's way more tied to Malenia than anything. All of the redheads are given important lore on their backstory and who trained them, often focusing on their hard work and achievements. Other than all being Empyreans, they're a bit harder to tie together lore-wise, but all of these characters go through a transformation, either pretending to be someone else, revealing their hidden god within them, or going from sane to corrupted. If we count Rykard, then the snake comes into play again here. Old people. Gray hair. We have Hoarah, Godric and Godfroy, Ansbach, Margit, Morgott, the Finger Reader Maidens, Kale and the Merchants, Egon, Freya, Jaren, Ensha, and maybe Rykard again? We'll get back to him later. I guess the Albernorics also count here. Immediately, it is apparent that these characters are a lot more mortal than the other characters we've mentioned. While some of them have divine blood, they're a lot more aged. All of these characters are devoted to things that fail them, from Marika divorcing Godfrey and leaving him with the kids, to the failed Lord Godric resulting to grafting people for power, to the Albernorics trusting in Malenia and Mikola and not ending up in the Halig Tree or getting killed by Gideon, to Ansbach being loyal to a dead Moog, to the Finger Readers and the Original Sin and Mater, to the Merchant's death at the Frenzied Flame, to the Drake Warriors, which ends up getting Egon severely injured and killed, to Radagon's insanity, and to Gideon. Freya and Ansbach, being followers of Radahn and Moog respectively here, are important because of their use by Mikola to obtain divinity, and these are the only two of the Mikola gang to show their hair, not just in promotional material. Despite the gray hair, age doesn't stop these characters, their convictions do. I'd like to throw Fia at the end here because I can't fully tell if her hair is blonde or gray, though her connection to Godwyn can fulfill either category. Brown hair, the color of all things mundane. We have Renalla, Melina, Bernal, Nefeli, Edgar, and Dialos. All of these characters generally have better things happen to them. Renalla doesn't die at the end of her boss fight. Her phase 2 is a shade created by Ranni. She's still alive, that's a happy-ish ending. While she is connected to royalty, she's not actively interested in power or taking over as Elden Lord. Melina is able to complete the objective of burning the Erdtree, even at her death. Nefeli can rule over Limgrave after Godric's death. You can help Bernal at Volcano Manor. Edgar can receive Irina's letter, though she still does die. Dialos becomes the new potentate and finds meaning in life. All of these characters can at least have some kind of generally happy moment, and their relation to mundanity helps them. Despite Melina being the daughter of Marika, she isn't in line for the throne. Her place as the Gloam-Eyed Queen sets her apart from the rest of the characters here, but she rarely presents her powers the way others do, only either when fighting Morgott or if you go the Frenzied Flame ending and piss her off. By being removed from divinity, these characters have a bit of a better time in comparison to those who are much more faithful. Other hair colors. This is for characters like Ranni, St. Trina, and Rykard, finally. All three of these characters have some kind of unnatural hair. Ranni with blue and spectral, St. Trina with purple, and Rykard's scales mimicking hair. Very immediately, all three of these characters are connected to the divine and all went through a bodily transformation to become more powerful, discarding their flesh to become something more. Ranni transferring her souls to the puppet, St. Trina being the discarded love of Mikola, and Rykard being eaten by the serpent. They all have unnatural existences, and this is reflected to us very heavily in their design, that they should not exist in the forms that they do, but they do anyways. and all play into moments when the game flips things on its head mechanically, showing us through gameplay how far apart these characters are from everyone else. Ronnie's example being very literal, flipping the Divine Tower on its head. Reichart's boss fight is the singular gimmick fight in the game, and St. Trina's quest actively requires you to die multiple times before she even says anything to you, which goes against our gamer logic as dying bad, so having to do it multiple times feels unnatural.
Okay, what about going back to hairstyles? I've already talked about Marika and Radagon's braids, but there are a few other characters who have them. Braids, first off, represent an orderliness, that your hair is not only tied back and out of your way, but it's a way to do so that is both practical and pretty. With long hair, having it down is not great for combat because it can get in your way. Believe me, I would know. Braids are an easy solution for this. Now, let's talk about single braids versus double braids versus whatever Godric has going on. Now, there's a reoccurring theme of doubles in Elden Ring, of people being two, whether literal or metaphorical. We see this with many characters throughout the game. If we compare Marika to Godfrey, Marika has a single set of double braids, whereas Godfrey has two single braids and small decorative ones off to the side. If you don't get what that means, then let me explain. Marika's head hair is one source of hair, and she splits it into two, which is the double braids. Godfrey has two sources of hair, his beard and his head. Both are braided into one singular braid, with all of the hair from that source. The decorative side braids here feel more like gathering all of the smaller hairs that didn't fit into something that won't get into his way when fighting. Godfrey's braids feel reminiscent of Vikings and their hairstyle, cluing us in on his warrior alter Hoaraloo.
Now there's an interesting gender presentation going on here, in that whatever Radagon's hairstyle, single or double braids, he pulls them behind himself, which hides his hair. Even watching their cutscene again, Marika's hair is in front of her shoulders, but when she turns to Radagon, suddenly the hair is behind. Now we gender long hair to be feminine, so Radagon's decision to push it behind himself is more of a masculine one. You could even argue that he does this because he hates his red hair. Godfrey's singular braids both hide his long hair and accentuate his masculinity with his long beard. Now while Marika's double is more literally being two people, her having two braids from one source is a nod to this. Both Radagon and Marika disagreeing and vying for control after she destroyed the Elden Ring. Godfrey, on the other hand, his double is a lot more of an alias or a restriction than literally being two people. We generally only see one braid at a time, and they're from separate sources. While both Hoaraloo and Godfrey stem from him, he can only be one at once, with or without Sarash, who restricts his power. If we look at someone like Godric, however, his hair is covered in multiple small braids. This can be tied to both his idol Godfrey having similar little side braids, and how he is also literally multiple people through grafting. His braids are also messy and unsymmetrical, representing a messy mental state and ideals, like with Marika. With the pattern of a character having multiple braids being multiple people, Raya's loopy braids fit right in. They look very strange and unnatural and would have taken a while to fix up compared to the simplicity of everyone else. This hints at her current form also being strange and unnatural, which comes to light when we see her real identity as the snake Zarias. If we look at Letta, her hair is tied up in a singular crown braid, literally representing her putting herself in charge by choosing a crown for herself. The only other characters whose hair is up in a way are Irina Hayata and Millicent after you give her the needle. Irina's hair being tied back in a very simple way makes sense for a character who is blind, and Hayata has little reason to change it. Millicent's hair change represents her wounds healing and making sense for a character who is returning to combat. Editing, Corey here, I forgot Mikola has braids. He has a crown braid and 5 braids around him, 2 in the front and 3 in the back. We've already talked about crown braids and all that applies here. I believe the 2 smaller ones in the front represent Moog and Radon, as he needs them for the ritual, and the 2 in the back that come off of the crown represent what he's discarded, as we can't see them from the front. And the large braid in the back that sits over the crown just represents himself as bigger than all of them and his desire for godhood. Thank you. If we look at the characters who have long hair, long being shoulder length and beyond, we have characters whose femininity plays an important part in their character. Mikola, St. Trina, Ronnie, Malenia, Fia, Nefeli, Irina Hayata, and Mesmer. We've already discussed Godfrey, Marika, and Radagon, so I won't bring them up again here. Mikola, for example, while being male, presents himself more like a young maiden. His long hair and femininity makes him disarming compared to the other male Empyreans, allowing him to subdue both Mohg and Radahn by doing so. And this also manifests in Saint Trina being a woman. Ranni's femininity comes into play with things like the Black Knives all being women, her siding with her mother over Radagon in the divorce and summoning the Shade to protect Renalla at her boss fight, her doll left in the Ainzel Rivermain, her dress, and Celavis's interest in her. She resorts to her cunningness and schemes rather than physical strength to get what she wants, a trope that appears in European myth all the time. Malenia's long hair is a mark of her femininity on the battlefield, as her movements are graceful and elegant. Her guards only being women is also similar to Ranni. When fighting her second phase, her hair is tied in with the wrought butterflies, showing her as the goddess of scarlet wrought. There's a really good video essay out there about the weirdness of Malenia's femininity that I will link down below if I can find. Fia, the deathbed companion, can only exist as a woman. She has to sleep with the dead to be able to conceive a new chance at life for them. While Nefeli's gender doesn't have much to do with her story, Celavis takes an interest in her, and most likely would not if she was a man. Irina and Hyetta are a little different in that Irina's only purpose is to be a helpless maiden, common trope, whereas Hyetta is less concerned with gender and more concerned with the Three Fingers. Mesmer's longer hair reflects his emotional state, letting it grow long and unshorn while also mimicking the trails of a flame. But there's a lot more to it than that, because this isn't his hair. What about characters whose hair isn't actually their hair? Their hair is all on their armor, masking their natural hair. Mesmer, Radahn, Freya, Ansbach, and Ensha. They're trying to give a different impression of who they are, rather than masking themselves completely, or they're exaggerating existing features about themselves. Mesmer's armor makes his hair look very similar to his real hair, just fixing the colors to show off the power of his flames. This is most likely because Mesmer is hiding the Abyssal Serpent in the grief of abandonment. His real hair is darker and messy, and he hides it away like his emotions. Radahn, Leda, Ansbach, and Ensha are a lot harder cases because we never see their real hair, just the decorative armor hair. Radahn's armor is designed to look tough, almost like a lion's mane. It shows off his power immensely, so it makes sense for a general to wear armor like this, even though he lost to Malenia. It can also represent hiding the vow to Mikola. Ensha's can reference his tough guyness in order to kill you from Gideon. Freya and Ansbach reference their beliefs in Radahn and Mohg despite working with Leda and Mikola. Very ironic given what happens to their lords. Ansbach is especially trying to give off old learned vibes with that fake beard, even though he's intelligent enough to figure out what's happening. Freya's represents strength in battle, given that her armor also shoots hair out from the top like Radahn. Characters who have their hair fully down: Morgott, Roderika, Melina, Bernal, Edgar, Quilin, Kenneth, and Dialos all have straightforward intentions. Morgott is still defensive of his mother despite her abandonment and wishes to follow through with her command so that she may one day accept him. Roderika and Melina start with their hair under their cloak, then reveal it when they feel more comfortable. They're not really hiding anything, maybe excluding Bernal betraying you, but he's literally a part of Volcano Manor. Edgar trying to kill you might be a surprise, but it's a straightforward way of thinking after Irina's death. Quilin is just a good old Marika believer trying to do his part. Kenneth Haight just wants his castle back and to find a new lord for Limgrave. And Dialos just needs to find a purpose in his life again after Lanya's death. Characters with partially covered hair are specifically hiding something, and may even have to change their clans. Ranni, Malenia, Renalla, and Fia. Ranni lies to you about who she is and only takes interest in you once you've shown some amount of usefulness. Malenia starts out with her hair partially covered, possibly hinting about the knowledge she has of Mikola, but once you start phase 2, she just needs to kill you. Renalla gives you access to respecking only after you defeat her, and compared to all the other characters, we see the roots of her hair rather than the ends. This shows us she's a lot more open than the other characters here by showing a more vulnerable part of her hair. Fia giving you the Baldekin's blessing, granting a health penalty for keeping it, is notable enough. Her resorting to killing Dee in self-defense as well. The design is a very literal metaphor that these people are hiding something but are willing to open up. Characters who have covered their hair and their eyes but not their face, so Dane and Roger, both start as allies that turn against you later. Dane in the Letta fight and Roger in the Fia's Champs fight. Still, being able to see their faces gives us some warmth to them, even though we don't see their battle until later. By not allowing us access to their eyes, we are never able to meet their gaze and therefore unable to fully connect with them despite their kindness. There's a sense of trustworthiness beside this though, and we're brought to like these characters, only for them to turn on us. Characters with fully covered hair but whose eyes we can see, Gowry and Ymir, are both characters who are trying to connect themselves to a higher power. Gowry wanting to see Millicent and, by extension, Malenia's rot, and Ymir wanting to become the Finger Mother. Both characters hide their true source of power with their devotion leading to the deaths of who they care for. They cover up their secrets and intentions, but are head-on in their desires. I won't be going into every character whose face and hair we can't see at all, because the line of who counts can get tricky, because, we don't see Gaius's or Rolana's face or hair, and they're just doing their jobs. We don't see Gideon's face or hair, and he turns against us. We don't see Patch's hair because he's bald. But the characters who wear a mask over their face, Thalier, Celavis, Selen, Tanith, Freya, and Vare, all try to present themselves in a different way from who they are. Thalier's mask represents his insecurity of not being enough for Santrina, so he hides who he is and puts up a facade to hopefully be someone worthy for her. Celavis hides his face because he's a puppet master. He doesn't want you to look at his face, you're supposed to look at the puppets. It also hides his eventual attempt at subduing Ronnie. Selen's mask is her trying to cling on to her studies after being expelled from Rhea Lucaria. She still wishes to present to us as a scholar, and wearing the uniform is the best shorthand way to do so. Tanith presents herself as a motherly figure who wishes to serve her Lord Rykard by taking down the Erdtree, hiding the fact that she sends the best tarnish to be eaten by him. Freya, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be hiding anything. In fact, she openly shows her wounds from the Scarlet Rot. My only guess is that this represents her hiding her allegiance to Miquella before Radahn's fall. Vare, the first NPC that we meet, tries to act as a bit of a guide for the Tarnished, only to reveal that he's absolutely taking you off the beaten path to send you to Moog. All of these characters hide themselves in service of a greater purpose, and when we think of them, we often think of who they associate themselves with. These characters put their faith before themselves, literally showing a different face because of it. They don't prioritize themselves over what they believe in. All of these patterns in the characters' designs work as a good shorthand to tell us about them and what they're going to do without spoiling things entirely. One thing I love about Elden Ring is that the character diversity shows us that there are so many things in life that aren't gendered. Strength, corruption, intelligence, perseverance, and skill aren't just stuck to one side of the aisle. Characters are both allowed to be strong and flawed despite their gender and because of it, and it shows in their designs. You can have feminine armor that's not just booby armor. These designs are a masterclass of fantasy, and I really hope that future games and similar media are able to see how Elden Ring does it right. Howdy gamers, thanks for sticking with me through my first, non-Google Slides video essay. Still trying to figure out how to edit, but I generally got the basics down. Also, I couldn't figure out how to slide in a translation of the Harpies song, so here is your obligatory me mentioning I know Latin in every video moment. Feel free to like and subscribe down below, and check me out on Blue Sky at Corey Forroy. Thank you, bye!